In today's lesson, we are going to see two topics that will be what are the prefabs and the potential in order to improve the implementation of the system, and how the animation system works in Unity. Okay, if you don't have the code of the project that we have done so far, you can download it from here and we will start from there. Okay, so the use that we are going to do of the prefabs right now in this particular case is to optimize the level design. Okay, so we are going to understand how the prefabs work applied to our level design. What we are going to do is just to create multiple prefabs for both enemies and NPCs. Okay, so back to the Unity project. In the folder assets, we are going to create a new folder into the path assets, game resources, prefabs. Here we are going to create the folder avatars. Okay, avatars. Now go to the level 0 prefab. Okay, and here what we are going to do, we are going to convert the enemies and the NPCs to prefabs. And these prefabs are going to be placed inside the folder avatars that we have just created. Okay, but in the process to make it right, not to lose anything of the progress that we have done, what we are going to do is, before creating the prefabs, okay, we are going to move out the waypoints in the case that we are converting into prefab enemy or an NPC that has waypoints. We need to move, remove them in order to not include them in the prefab. Okay, we are going to do an example and you will do the rest. Okay, so what we are going to do, for example, for the first enemy, what we are going to do is we are going to get all the waypoints. We are going to move it outside the enemy, and for the enemy we are going just to drag and drop to create the prefab. Okay, now we can place back the waypoints. Okay, so what is happening here is that, okay, the enemy is now a prefab, but the waypoints are not included in this prefab. They are only included in the scene for this particular case of the enemy. Okay, because what will happen is that we are going to use this prefab in other places, and we are not interested to have these waypoints. We can be interested to have less or more waypoints, so we need to leave out these waypoints when we are creating the prefab. Okay, so we are going to do the same for the rest of the enemies and the rest of the NPCs, so go ahead and do it. Okay, to verify that nothing has been lost, just run the project and verify that you are still getting the exactly same behavior. Okay, the waypoints for the enemy 1 is working. Also, that enemy is also working. And for the NPCs, they are patrolling through the collection of waypoints. Okay, so in the process of creating the prefabs, we didn't destroy anything. So now we are going to replace all the existing enemies and NPCs that we are using on the other levels with the prefabs that we have just created. In order to replicate the elements, just preserve first the existing elements, place the new ones, and just rebuild them. Remember that the level controller has these two arrays that made reference to all the enemies and the NPCs that are on the scene. And when you are using new instances of the enemies, you have to make reference to fill these two arrays with the new reference. Okay, so first, don't do it all the characters at the same time. Just change one and make sure that it works as expected. But first of all, let's implement a shortcut key in order to change to the next level fast. Okay, because right now we need to kill all the enemies in order to transition to the next level. So let's program a shortcut key in order to transition. So let's go to the code and do it by yourself. Okay, and the shortcut key should look similar to this. What we are doing is just when we are on the game running state, we are checking that if this the key N is pressed, we transition to the win state, so we will be able to load the next state really fast and be able to check all the levels really fast. Okay, now back to the Unity editor. We are going to do that. We are going to rebuild in the other levels the previous behavior that we already had, but with the new prefabs. Okay, so what we have here is, for example, we have two enemies. Neither of them have waypoints. Okay, so what we are going to do is, okay, let's use our prefabs. Okay, for the enemy, we are going to use this one, and we are going to place it here, and we are going to use the same coordinates for both cases. Okay. Okay. And what we are doing here to replicate this has no waypoints. So what we will do here is that in the instance, in the patrol waypoints, we are going to set this to 0. And later on, we will do a change in the code in order that if we have the patrol waypoints component, but there are no waypoints in there, just run the default behavior, the one that doesn't consider the waypoints. Okay. But for the moment, just try to replicate all the cases, and once you have replicated one case, just delete it. Okay, what has happened with, okay, this is right here. Okay, let's adjust it right here. Okay, this is the level floor. Okay, right here. Okay, just do the rest of the levels and the enemies, and come back when you're finished. So let's play our scene. Okay. The first level was working so far, so let's press the shortcut key that we have programmed to jump to the next level. And here we are getting some errors, okay, in patrol waypoints. The reason why is that the patrol waypoints always expects that we have at least one element to go through. That's why it's complaining, okay? So what we are going to do now is that we are going to fix these problems. The problems are with two components, okay? Are with the patrol waypoints components and also with the area vision detection component, okay? So we want to have the option to run the first initial behavior that we implemented for the enemies. And for that to happen with enemies that have the patrol waypoints component and the area vision detection component, we have to do some changes. Okay, so the exercise right now is that you have to program the necessary changes in order to run the initial behavior when the enemy has these two components. Okay. Tips for the patrol waypoints: we need to check that there are no waypoints to follow before activating completely the patrol waypoints behavior. Okay, and for the area vision detection, what you should do is to create a boolean that will tell the system, okay, I am going to use or not the area vision detection for detecting the player. Okay, so go ahead and do it. Okay, and the result should look similar to this. The first thing that we have done is to check that the patrol waypoints is before fully activating the behavior. Check that if we don't have, if we have any waypoint, okay, we can proceed to synchronize. But in the case that we don't have it, we won't be activating the behavior. Also, we have created a method that tells us if there are waypoints available to patrol too. Okay, and back to the enemy, he's checking on patrol and check. He's checking that if it doesn't have the component or there are no waypoints to patrol to, then he will run the original behavior we implemented for the enemy. But if both conditions different from null and there are waypoints are true, then we will proceed to activate the behavior. We have also checked that exists the patrol component and it's active in order to deactivate the patrolling. And we also have to check right here the behavior to run the previous original behavior. Okay? And we have done exactly the same for the NPC in exactly the same places. And the next thing that we have done is for the area vision detection, we have created that boolean that will allow us to know, okay, I am going to use the area vision detection or not. We have used it in order to prevent for creating the polygon that makes the area of view. Okay, and also in the update method, we check if this variable is false, just to return and don't do anything of the logic. Okay, so now if we did it right and proceed to run, first of all, I have forget, go to the levels and check, for example, this has waypoints and this has area vision detection, but we are not interested to use the area vision detection to detect the enemy. Okay, so we have set to false the new variable that we created. Okay, and let's check the other elements. This has no area vision detection, no patrol waypoints. This has patrol waypoints. This has area vision detection. This should be true. Okay, we are good in this one. And let's go to the other level and let's go through all the enemies. This one has no waypoints. This one should be also false, area vision detection. This has no waypoints, also false. And this also has no waypoints, but it doesn't have the area vision detection. And finally, this one has no waypoints, and we should disable also this one. Okay, so we should be good to run. Okay, check that everything is still working on the first level. Okay, they are transitioning in the expected waypoints, and go to the next level, pressing the shortcut key, jump to the next level. Okay, and now let's trigger the behavior. Okay, we had one NPC patrolling through the waypoint, so it's working good. And let's trigger the behavior for the enemy. Let's see. Let's get closer. Okay, it's close and it's shooting at us. If we try to get away, okay, and he goes back to the initial position. And he should stop there. Okay, jump into the next level. Okay, and we have one enemy patrolling through there. Okay, he has no area vision detection, so I suppose that the behavior will be triggered by distance. Okay, we can try to fix that. Go back to the level 2 for that particular enemy that had and enable the use area vision detection. Go back and play it again. Jump for the second level. Okay, and now we get the enemy patrolling, and okay, we can get close to him and the behavior won't be triggered. Okay, but if we get in its detection view, he will go towards us. Okay, so we have our functionality fully working. Okay, so once all the characters have been replaced with the prefabs, we have to understand what changes when we make only changes for an instance of that prefab in the scene, and when we change the properties of the same prefab. Okay, first of all, the first step that we are going to do is to change the prefab properties, and we will see that that affects to all the instances. Okay, so for example, we are going to remove in the enemy prefab the component area vision detection, and in all the instances for all the levels that are using this prefab, we will be able to see that this component has disappeared from all the instances on all the levels. Okay, so let's go to the code. Let's select the enemy prefab, and in the component we are going just to remove them. Okay, as an additional change, now that I have to think about it, I am going to add just a small hat in a form of cube. Okay, just to make it more visible of the whole thing. Okay, let me fix the size a little bit. Just imagine that this is a hat. Okay, okay, so this is a hat. We are good. Okay, so if we go through all the levels, in all the places that we are using the enemy, for example, right here, and the level 1 also we are using here. In these components, the area vision detection has disappeared. Okay, both in the level 0 for the enemy, the area vision detection is no longer there. For the level 1 also, the area vision detection is not there, and the cube with a hat is there. And for the level 3, I think that also I have used, yes, the enemy and the area vision detection is not there. If everything is programmed right, the behavior should still be working. That means that if we get close to the enemy, the detection by distance should be triggered. Okay, it's working, so he starts shooting. Okay, so let's get him back to patrolling. Okay, so it's working fine, and if we jump off level, we should be seeing also the enemy there, triggering also by distance. Okay, and he goes back to the initial position, and the final one, transition for the final level, the enemy is also there. Okay, so let's restore in the prefab the area vision detection. Okay, and what will happen, well, in this particular case, is that when you add the component, by default the use behavior will be true, and since well, we will have to go through the scenes, the levels, sorry, just to make sure that it needs to be activated. For example, here we are interested to be activated because it's patrolling through waypoints. In the level 1, we are not interested because we don't have any waypoints to patrol, so the behavior is false. And in the level 3, we have waypoints, so it should be true. Okay, it's true. Good. So just for the sake of testing, just play it again. And we have restored the previous behavior, but we have missed the texture applied to the field of view. So, okay, so we are going to fix that in the same prefab. So it will affect to all the instances of that prefab. That is on materials. It's the red material on the area vision detection, red material there. And now if we go back to play, we have restored the red material. Okay, it's detecting. Okay, we transition of states. That one didn't need the area vision detection, so it won't render the field of view, but in the last level we get the field of view. Okay, so you have seen the way it works for modifications related to the prefab, how it affects to all the instances that are being used in the scenes. So the next thing that we are going to do is just to change the properties of the instances of the prefabs wherever we are using, both in the scene or as in this case in the level 0 prefabs. Just change the properties there, okay, and observe that only affects to the object that you are modifying in that particular instance. Okay, do it, and I am going also do it with you, but I am going to modify the properties that I like, and you are going to do the same for your case. So go ahead and do it. Okay, and I have made some changes in the instances of multiple elements. Okay, so for example, here I have changed the scale to 2 to make it bigger. The reference to this enemy is to this prefab. Okay, and I have made some changes on this NPC just to put some balls as a representation of hair, maybe. And in the level 2, I have made some other changes. The NPC, this one has a rotation speed instead of 10, 1. He will rotate towards the player really slowly. And the size is way bigger, it's 3. Okay, and finally, and yes, in this one also I have made the enemy one just really small. And in the level 2, what I have done is in the enemy 1, just to the HUD, just make it bigger, larger. Okay, so if we proceed to play, okay, what do we have here is, okay, we have the, yes, we have the one with the balls. Okay, it's going towards us, and it's going to talk. Okay, it's talking to us. Okay, good. And we have there the huge enemy. Okay, if we get close to the detection distance, it's there. It's detecting us. Okay, it's shooting at us. It's shooting at us. Okay, jump to the next level. And we have a huge NPC there that it's rotating slowly. Okay, that's fine. Let's get away from him and go to the enemy one that it's really small. Okay, we have a mini enemy here shooting at us. Okay, good. Finally, the last level, we have our enemy one with the huge cat. Okay, as you have seen, I have made the changes only on the instances in the level prefabs, okay? And this has not changed the prefabs in any way, okay? So if I add a new enemy one just right here, the enemy one just right here, will be won't be exactly the same, because this has been a change that I have made for this particular instance, not for the whole prefab. Okay, this prefab is just intact. Okay, let me watch it a little bit better. Okay. So, but if you're interested to apply the prefab, the changes that you have done in a particular instance to the prefab, first of all, you have to be careful, because you may be destroying something in other places where these instances of this prefab are being used. So be extremely careful about what you do, and be sure about it. In order for, okay, I have made some changes on my enemy, I want to apply it to the prefab. You have the option to apply all here, overrides, and if you press this button, the change that you have done here will be copied to the prefab. But be careful about this feature. Okay, you have to consider that if you are using this enemy in multiple places, you are overriding, and you may have unexpected behaviors. You will have unexpected behaviors. Okay, so be careful about it. So in short, changing the prefab changes everywhere where it's used, the prefab for each instance that of that prefab, and changing only the instance of the prefab, both in the scene or as we have seen in our case on our levels, changes only that particular instance in the scene. By this way, you can you can create enemies that share a collection of common properties and customize them differently for each level. On the next step of this lesson, we are going to be introduced to the component Animator, and it's connected to our particular case, because what we are going to do is to modify the prefabs, adding 3D models of characters, and using the component Animator to animate these 3D characters. Okay, so you are going to download this collection of 3D characters from that I own, that are from my previous games, and that you can use for free in your projects any way you want. So you can download it from here. Download the Unity package and import the Unity package into your project. Okay, so okay, after importing, you should have a new two folders, TextMesh Pro, and this folder of your VR experience, and in the root of this folder there is the scene, okay, where they are placed all the different characters that I own for and I have used in my previous games, that are free for you to use, and that's the characters that we are going to use for this course. Okay, so back to the lesson. What we are going to do, we are going to create a new folder called animations in this path. Okay, so go to prefabs, avatars, animations, and we are going to place everything of your VR experience. We can move the whole folder from here to animations. Okay, so we are going straight to the point, and we are going to add a 3D model inside enemy prefab. Okay, so select an enemy prefab. Let's go with this one. For the moment, we are going to choose the enemy 0 red model. Okay, and the enemy 0 prefab model should be here. Okay, so we are going to place this one just right here. We are going to reset the coordinates. Okay, and we are going to disable the mesh renderer of the capsule so we can see better our 3D model. Okay, and we are going to face the 3D model. We can remove the box collider from here and the rigid body because we are only interested in the 3D model, and we are going to adjust the size so it fits inside the colliders. So okay, once we are satisfied with the position of the 3D model inside the enemy prefab, we can proceed to play. Just make sure that you have loaded the game scene and press play. And as you can see, now we are using a 3D model for our enemy 1. Okay, so now we are going to see how the animation system works. First of all, on the folder avatars, we are going to add an animation controller. So let's go to the Unity project, and on the folder avatars at this level, we are going to create mouse left click, create, and create Animator controller. Okay, an Animator controller, and we will rename it as enemy animation data. The animation controller, if you double click on it, you will enter this state, and the animation controller will contain the information about the animation and its transitions. Okay, it's basically a finite state machine. Yes, it's a finite state machine. And the first state that we are going to do would be the state idle. Okay. To create an state, mouse left click in the area of the animator, and you will be able to create an empty state. For the moment, just create one. Okay, now a little bit of the basics in order to how to move through the animation editor. If you pressed the button Alt left and with the mouse pressed, you can move around. Okay, and you can select any of the states and you should see on the inspector information about them. So we are on the Animator tab, and the Animator tab offers us options to create and connect between multiple animations. The first animations that we have created has been the idle through mouse right click, create a state, and we have created state that we have called idle. And we select this state, and in order to set an animation for this state, we can press on this button, and a collection of the available animations that are imported inside this project will appear. Okay, we are interested to apply the animation related to that specific enemy that we are using. Okay, so I am going to guide you. First of all, we are interested in the animation of idle. Okay, so you can put the animations any way you want. I am going to place it like this. It's easier for me to see. And for this particular case, we are interested in the animation 01 and idle. Okay, this is the animation we are interested. If you select on the state, then select on the motion, on the animation, and then select on here, we can see that we have made a mistake, and it's not the animation we were looking for. Okay, let's correct that mistake. It's not enemy 1, it should be enemy animation 4. Okay, again, and yes, this time is the animation we were looking for. the animation for idle for our enemy enemy 0 red. Okay, so we have set this state idle with this animation, and what happens is that well, by default, as soon as the component, the animation controller with this data is attached to the enemy, it will be applied the transition to this animation. So now let's select the enemy prefab 1, the one we were editing. Select the enemy component, select the model, and you can see that there is a previous animation controller state, but for the moment just remove that component, okay? Because we are starting over. So what we are going to do is that for model, we are going to add the animator component, and in animator component there is the property controller that we will set with the information that we have defined within our state machine of different animations. Okay, let's do one more step. Right now this game object isn't necessary, so you can move the model just to this level, but we will have to unpack previously. Okay, so unpack previously, and now you can move the model to this level and remove that object that is empty. Okay, so we have our enemy, we have our 3D model, and with this 3D model we have our animator component with the animation data that we have just created for our enemy. Okay, so if we go and press play, and we go and we check on the enemy, let's get him. Okay, he is on the idle state. Okay, he's transitioning from the idle state, and he's staying on that idle state. Okay, so the next step will be to create the different states and what needs to happen to transition from one state to the other. So back to editing the animation data. We are going to create two new states and rename them as one state as run and the other state as death. Okay, so we are going to create two states more. One state, rename it as run, and the other state, rename it as death. Now we are going to search for the animations for both the run animation for our enemy and the death animation for the same enemy. So select one of the states, go to motion, open this panel, and look for run. And we are interested in the enemy for run. Okay, if we choose the motion, then choose here, we should see here the run animation. Okay, that's what we are looking for. Now for the death animation, select the state, select open here and search for die, I think, and the enemy for die. Okay, select it and select the motion, select in here and check that this is the die animation. Okay, we are good. Now we are going to create transitions between the states. Okay, so we are going to place these two states right here and the death state just below these two. Okay, and to make a transition between two states, you have to select a state, press a right mouse click, and there is the option to make the transition. So choose it and drag the mouse and click on the state you want to transition to. Okay, so click. So now there is a connection between idle and the state run. Okay, Since we are going from run to idle, because there will be instances of the enemy just stopping, we also need the transition from running to the idle state. Okay, so we also select the run state, make the transition, and click on the idle state. So we have one transition from idle to run and another transition from run to idle. Good. Now we have to make a transition from both idle and run to the death state. Okay, so select the state, right mouse click, make the transition, click on the death state. Select the state, make the transition, click. Okay, we are not going back from death. Okay, so we are not going to create transitions back to idle or run. Now on the section of parameters, you are going to create a new parameter of the type integer, and you are going to call it animation ID. Okay, so here call it animation ID, and this is the parameter that we are going to use to tell the system that we want to transition from one state to the other. Okay, now select a transition, for example, from idle to run, and the first thing that you are going to do is just to disable exit time, because we want to control by ourselves the transition from these two states, and if it has exit time, it means that automatically changes, so we are not interested in that. So disable has exit time, and on the conditions list you are going to press on the plus to create a new condition. Okay, and directly it will fill the options with the parameters that you have here. In this case, you only have one parameter, that's the one that we are going to use, and we are going to choose that if this parameter is equals to 1, we want to transition from idle state to run state. Okay, so we have defined the condition that if animation ID is 1, we will transition from idle to run. Now let's make something similar, but from run to idle. Let's disable the has exit time, move this here, and add a new condition. Animation ID is equals to 0. Keep it that way. And now for the transition to death, set to false exit time, and add in the conditions equals to 2. And the same from the transition from run to death. Deactivate has exit time, add a new condition, and this should transition when animation ID is equals to. Okay, we have defined our finite state machine and the conditions that should be met in order to transition from one state to the other. And now the next thing that we need to do is, to use it. So now what we have to do is to reference inside the enemy script the Animator controller in order to call him to transition between these different states. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is just to create a public member variable that will be the reference to that animation controller. Okay, so go back to the code and create a public member variable that will be the reference to the model, to the 3D model that will contain the animator. Okay, we are going to put it on the avatar script because this is something that it's going to everybody who is inheriting from avatar, even the bullet itself, can take advantage of this system. So this system is going to be implemented at this level, at the level of avatar, and all the classes who inherit from avatar are going to take advantage of it. Okay, so declare it as public, place it here, and now back to the Unity editor. We are going to select the enemy prefab, enemy 0 prefab right here. We have expanded the enemy script, and here we can see how the model 3D has appeared. Okay, so what we need to do right now is to reference the 3D model who contains the animator. Okay, so we can drag and drop, and we are making reference to the model that contains the animator. Okay, so we have this reference, and we will be able to use the functionality of an animator in order to transition between the different animation states. So now we are going to create a new method in the avatar script, and the name of this method will be change animation, and it will use one parameter, an integer called animation ID. This parameter will tell us to what state we want to transition the animation. Do you remember that for when we were working on the transitions for the animation ID, we were using that this 0, 1, 2. Okay, so the transition from idle to run should be 1. The from run to idle is 0, and from idle to death 2, and also here 2. Okay, so that's what we are going to do with the animation controller with this reference right here. We are going to call the method that will allow us to change that parameter to the value we want to transition the animation. So go ahead and implement the method that will allow you to change that parameter, so we can trigger that animation. So go ahead and do it. And the solution should look similar to this. We have created a protected method because it's going to be used by all the classes who inherit from Avatar. First of all, we check that the reference to the animator is not null. There is something there. And if there is something, there is this property set integer that allows us to just set the value of a parameter contained inside the animator controller data. Okay, this animation ID is just the one that we have defined, the one that we are using for to trigger the transitions between the different states. So the next step that we are going to do, we are going back to the enemy script, and we are going to create the 3 private constants that will be the different states that the enemy is going to transition in the animation state. Now, only for the sake of testing, what we are going to do is just to trigger call the change animation with the animation run. And what this should do is that we are going to stay, instead of starting with the idle state, we are going to start directly with the run state, and we are going to stay there. Okay, so what you are going to see, what should happen is that if you run, the enemy is going to keep on the state running all the time, even when he has stopped. Okay, he's stopping right now in that waypoint. Okay, and as you can see, the animation is still running. Okay, let's go into fix that. So we are interested to know when the enemy is moving and when it's standing. So far, we have behaviors when the enemy has the patrol waypoints, and we have behavior when the enemy has not the patrol waypoint component. Right now we are going to focus our attention in implementing a way to detect when the enemy is moving and when the enemy is standing using the patrol waypoints component. So what we are going to do is that we are going to create two events. Okay, we are going to use the design pattern of the observer pattern in order to construct, to code two events that will report when the patrol waypoints component is making the attached component transitioning from one waypoint to the next, and when the patrol waypoints is running the instruction of standing in one place. Okay, so what we are going to do is just to copy and paste this code into our project. Let's go to the patrol waypoints component, and in here we are going to place these events just on the top of the class. Okay, so we have two delegates in order to be able to declare the two events, and we have one event that will report that when the patrol waypoints component is moving towards the next waypoint, and we have another event that will be reported when the patrol waypoints is in the state of stay in waypoint. So now find where we can dispatch these events in the patrol waypoints component. Okay, just remember that the patrol waypoints component is inheriting from state machine, and remember that there is an exact place where the transitions happens only once. So think about it and find out where to dispatch this event. Go ahead and do it. Okay, and the result should look similar to this. We are taking advantage that patrol waypoints is inheriting from a state machine, that it's a finite state machine, and that we are using change state to change this for the changing of the state. So in that exact moment, we can trigger the events to report to anyone who is listening that, okay, we are moving to the next waypoint with dispatch moving event, and we are standing still if we are on the staying waypoint. So back to the enemy script, what we are going to do is we are going to add the code to listen for the events from patrol waypoints to detect that when we listen the event to move, we are going to change the animation for the run animation, and when we listen the event to stand still, we are going to change the animation to the idle animation. So go ahead and do it. Okay, and the code should look similar to this. We are listening. In this case, we are adding the listeners for the events that we have just created on the patrol waypoints component. We are adding the listeners at just in the start of the avatar. Okay, and we are creating both methods on move even and on stand even at this level and declare them as virtual. So the only thing that left to do for the enemy who inherits from avatar is just to extend them So when these events are triggered and these methods are called, we are just triggering the animations that we need to transition to. Okay, if we save and proceed to run the project, we should be seeing our enemy who patrols between waypoints just standing still when it reaches the waypoint to stand. Okay, so next waypoint should transition. Okay, as you can see, for 2 seconds the enemy stood still. Okay, so our animation system is properly working. So now let's implement the change of animations when the enemy does not have the patrol waypoints active. So go ahead and find the places in the code that belong to the initial behavior we implemented for the enemy, and find out where to trigger the animation to run and when to trigger the animation to stay still. So go ahead and do it. Okay, and the code should look similar to this. For the initial behavior we implemented for the enemy, when it is in patrol and check and it doesn't have the component active, it will go to initial position. And what we are doing here is that, okay, we are far away from the initial position, so we should run towards the initial position. So we change the animation to run. But if we are close to the position, just change the animation to stay idle. But this is going to be called each cycle, okay? Because it's inside the update. The go to position, it's inside the update, and it's going to be called every time. So what we have done here is that in the change animation, we have created a new protected variable member where we keep track of the animation where we currently are. So if the animation is different from the current animation, is that we need to change it, okay? So we use this protected variable member to keep track of that and only change the animation when it's a different one. So this code, even though the change animation in here it's going to be called multiple times, this if conditional will allow us to prevent from triggering again and again for each cycle. Okay, if we go to the code and we check with one of the enemies that don't have the patrol waypoints component, okay, but we need to replace for the enemy that doesn't have the patrol waypoints component, we need to replace the 3D model. So let's go and do it. And we are going to choose another 3D model for this case. And yeah, let's choose a similar one, and so we can use the same animation states, animation data that we have already used. So we are going to use the enemy orange. Blue, better the blue one is it's way different from the red one. Okay, and we are going to replace it right here. Okay, once it fits the mesh, what we need to do is just in the enemy script, in the model 3D, we need to, first of all, we can just remove the animation data and replace it with the one that we have created for our enemy, because it's exactly the same model, but it's a different texture. The enemy 0 from the enemy 1, so the same animation data is going to work. Okay, so you can use the same animation data. And finally, let's connect the enemy script with the 3D model with the animator. Okay. Okay, I hope that you have selected the right 3D model. And it's a different one. It's the one there, the gigantic one. Okay, so we are still to change that enemy back there. So we are going to repeat the same process, but the last time for this enemy. So go ahead and do it. Okay, so now that we should have replaced the right one, and we should go back to play. And we can see there that the enemy is there. So let's go and visit him. Okay. So if we get close to him, okay. Okay, the animation is not being triggered. So we are doing something wrong. Let's find out what it is. Okay, so this is the behavior when it goes back to the initial position, but in the case that it detects that it should move forward the player, we should trigger also the animation to run. Okay, so in the change state that, okay, the enemy has detected the players, so it transitions to go to player, so it should run towards the enemy. So we were missing that in the change state, changing the animation to run. So now we can go back to the project, play it. Okay, and when we get close to the enemy is going to run towards us until it gets to the shooting distance, where it stands idle and starts shooting. Okay, and if we get away, he goes back to the initial position, and when he gets there to the initial position, it stands still. Okay, so we have both. We have the animations covering both cases, with enemies with the patrol waypoints component there and enemies without it. So we have that covered. So the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to do an exercise, and we are going to add a new animation that will be the enemy attacking. Okay? So at the end, what you will have is that when you are changing to the state shoot to player, instead of right now changing to the animation idle, you will change to the new animation that you will have created. Okay, the animation attack. So go ahead and do it. And the result should look similar to this. The first thing that we have done is just to create a new state for the finite state machine of the animations called state attack. And for the state attack, we've chosen an attack animation. Okay. Then we have created the transitions between the different states, from idle to attack, from run to attack, and from attack to death. Okay. Next, we went to the code. We created a new constant for the animation of attacking, and we used this new animation in the shoot to player state to change to that new animation. So if we go to the Unity project and we play, if we go to any of the enemies, he will start with the animation of attacking. Okay. So the only animation that is missing right now is the animation of death. So that's what we are going to do now. We are going to do the necessary changes to trigger the death animation and at least be able to see the enemy falling before destroying it. So that's what we are going to do. We are going to trigger the death animation when we kill an enemy, and at least we are going to wait until the animation is completely finished. Okay, so go ahead and do it. And the result should look similar to this. What we have done, first of all, just to call the change animation to the animation death on when we are changing to die. Okay, we trigger the animation. And what we have done in the update is that we are going to increase a time counter. So we are going to destroy the enemy only after some time has passed, in order to have enough time to see the death animation. Okay. After that, we change just the state to null, and we can destroy this game object, the game object of the enemy. This time counter variable we have declared it at this level because it will prove useful in general for state operations for the state machine. So at least you have some variable that you can use to count the time. Now we can go to the Unity editor, we can press play. And if we proceed to kill an enemy, okay, let's kill this one. And as you guys have seen, the enemy has fallen and now disappears. Let's do the same with this one. And again, the animation of death has been triggered and the enemy has fallen. Good. So the next thing that you are going to do is that you're going to do just the same for the NPC. You are going to create the structure to reference a 3D model with the Animator component. So you can use the implementation that we have done for the changing of the animation state. And well, you have to make all the necessary changes in the script NPC in order for the animations to work. Okay, so do it for the NPCs and convert and create as many enemies using animations as possible. You are free to do as much as you want. Okay, so go ahead and do it. And for the implementation of the animation system for the NPC, the result should look similar to this. What we have done, we started first with the code. And since we were inheriting most of the initialization from Avatar and NPC is inheriting from Avatar, we got both all necessary listeners to listen when the events for movement and standing from patrol waypoints were detected. Okay, so the only thing that we needed to do is exactly the same like in the enemy. When we detect the events from patrol waypoints to move or stand, we just triggered the animations. The animation is also something that comes from Avatar. Okay, and it's almost exactly the same as the enemy. When it goes to the initial position, we change the animation to run if it's far away from the initial position, and if it's close, it's we change to the idle state. Also, finally, in the change state, when it goes to the player, it triggers the animation to run. If it talks to the player, it triggers the animation to talk. In the animation system, there is no animation of talking for this particular 3D model. I am using the same animation as attacking as walking, so feel free to use in your case whatever you want. And finally, the triggering of the animation of that. At last, in the state die, we do exactly the same as in the enemy. We check the time counter, and if it goes above 4 seconds, we destroy the NPC. The result, when you run the project, should look similar to this. Okay, so let's go for that NPC. As you can see, he's patrolling through the collection of waypoints, walking right, and standing where it needs to stand, that is in this moment. Okay, and when it detects you, it goes for you, and well, as I have said, there is no talk animation. I have used the attack animation that already have, and if we get away, he goes back to patrolling. Let's kill it. Okay, that's the last animation we need to trigger, and when we kill it, falls and disappears. Okay, so we are good. You can proceed to do as many NPCs and enemies as you want. You have many different types of enemies right here. Okay, from different games. So you can use whatever you want for your NPCs and enemies. So go ahead and do it.